Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. I'm Adrienne Loth. I'm the marketing manager at the FIDO Alliance. KSI was kind enough to invite us to join them today with Yubico to discuss the future of passwordless security for shared workstations. So as you can see, I am not Megan Shamus, but I will do my best to fill in for her today. Before we get started, I'd like to ask our speakers to introduce themselves quickly. So Nick, if you wouldn't mind going first.
Yep, sure. Hi, my name's Nick Sargentson. I am the Principal Product Manager at Yubico for the YubiKey. I've been with Yubico 8 years today. Yay. And hopefully I can give you some insight on what we as a hardware manufacturer see out there and the challenges we face.
Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah, good morning and good afternoon to everyone that's in attendance here. I'm Kevin Krause, been with KSI for over a couple decades in the peripheral hardware business, in security, and we're here to share some pretty nice stuff between the companies and FIDO and what we do collectively to make things happen on the passwordless security. So glad to be here.
Great. So thank you both. To kick things off, I'm going to give a little bit of context about FIDO and passkeys, and then we'll have an open discussion and some Q&A. There's a widget at the bottom of the screen where you can submit your questions, and we'll do our best to answer those as we go, or we'll address them in the Q&A portion at the end. All right, so the FIDO Alliance has been operating since 2013 with the mission to provide open standards for simpler, stronger authentication using public key cryptography that's single gesture, possession-based, and phishing resistant. Passkeys is the newer term for FIDO credentials with some added functionality, but the mission of FIDO hasn't changed, and the protocols behind these credentials is still the same. What it boils down to is we have to fix authentication. The foundation of authentication systems is rooted in passwords, which are increasingly proving to be fundamentally flawed. Relying on passwords as the primary factor of authentication has led to significant negative security and usability outcomes. So this 81% number has taken various forms and from various studies. We probably all remember the stat coming from the Verizon data breach report a few years ago, but regardless of the stat, the vast majority of hacking-related breaches stem from weak or stolen passwords. This alarming reality reflects the vulnerability of password-dependent systems and the devastating impact of compromised credentials on organizational security. Beyond security concerns, password-based systems significantly hamper the user experience. Nearly half of users abandoned purchases because they couldn't remember their passwords. This highlights the direct cost of poor password usability on businesses. Phishing attacks have become increasingly successful with rises in direct financial losses. Password vulnerabilities remain a key exploit in phishing schemes, emphasizing the dire need for stronger authentication methods. So, most users are either using a weak password or reusing variations of the same password across multiple platforms. And this practice undermines security and enables hackers to exploit credential reuse very effectively. And then we have generative AI, which is making these attacks even easier to perpetuate more easily, more accurately at scale. Since late 2022, we've seen this type of trend line, and everything from credential phishing to targeted smishing is on the rise for a cumulative percentage of 4,151% since generative AI tools have been available to the public and also to threat actors. Phishing as an attack vector is predicted to get exponentially worse this year. Per the Harvard Kennedy study, today's AI tools are as efficient as humans are, but are 30 times more affordable. And we know that threat actors will always take the easiest and the cheapest path. So this is really foreshadowing of spikes in phishing attacks and password-related breaches that we expect to see over the next few years. Meanwhile, consumers are noticing this uptick. We did a study last year that showed that over a half of consumers reported an increase in suspicious phishing messages. So we often talk about layering on other factors on top of passwords, but this is just a Band-Aid. So, 2 layers is better than 1, but when you're using 2 phishable layers, you're still phishable, right? So we have to get to the root of the problem. And even those of us in the industry can still fall for phishing and social engineering attacks. Troy Hunt is a really well-known security researcher, and he runs the Have I Been Pwned data breach notification site. And he just recently shared that he fell victim to a phishing attack. He was tired. He was trying to get his newsletter out, and he fell for a phishing attack that exposed the email addresses of his subscribers. So no one's safe from phishing. So if phishing is the primary threat, a single phishing resistant authenticator is in most cases more valuable than two factors, which are both easily phished. So what if we could replace outdated legacy, the model of password plus something else, and could replace it with a single factor that's more secure and easier to use? Well, passkeys. So like I said, passkeys are any passwordless FIDO credential. They can be synced, which is typical for a larger scale implementation, or they can be device bound, typically on a security key like a YubiKey or a native app. Either way, the underlying FIDO protocols are the same, with new capabilities for syncing and then also new terminology. So now we understand the flawed nature of authentication, how passkeys can fix it. Let's talk about where we are with the support of passkeys and the overall adoption. So the reason why passwords have persisted is because they're built into the fabric of the internet. Every device, every browser, every operating system supports passwords. So if we replace passwords, if we're going to replace passwords, we need to change the fabric of the internet. We need passwords or passkeys to be as ubiquitous as passwords. Today they are. Every modern computing device, most operating systems, browsers support passkeys. Having the tech supporting passkeys is one piece. The next piece is to have services add support for passkeys, which they are. Clearly, the passkey vision has resonated with the marketplace. They're available for sign-in on what's probably now more than 48% of the world's top 100 consumer websites. So with availability comes awareness. When every major e-commerce site in the US uses passkeys, and when every operating system allows you to use passkeys to manage your account, people notice, which is great. And then likewise, we're seeing the same type of strong demand on the workforce side. So these are a couple of the brands that are enabling passkeys. Just yesterday, Meta announced that Facebook was enabled for passkeys. We're seeing new deployments constantly. The passkeys are reaching the industry far and wide. Deployments, commitments, products, and services. Even password managers who many thought would be displaced by this development are embracing it and making it their new business model. So here's a glimpse into a couple of the companies using passkeys for workforce, which is really where we're going to focus our discussion today in just a moment. But first, I want to highlight just some of the data of deploying organizations that have shared with us some of the key data points. The KPIs typically fall into a couple of categories, which you can see in these little snapshots here. Can my users access my site? What's the sign-in success rate? How quickly are they accessing it? What's the time to sign in? And from there, you start to see second level benefits. So increased revenue, decreased help desk costs, decreased fraud and attacks. So now I'm not going to go through these stats, but what I'd like to do is bring the conversation to Kevin and Nick to dig more into some of the specific use cases for FIDO, particularly in the shared workspace environment. So I guess the first question I have for you both, and we'll start with Nick, is what does success look like for organizations going passwordless? Are these data points in line with the KPIs your customers are seeing, or what is your experience then?
Yeah. So if we're helping an org head towards passwordless, we are normally talking shared workstations or their own devices. It's picking the right tech as always. There isn't a one size fits all kind of thing, but now we have both synced and device bound passkeys, and people like Microsoft will give you option for both. We've got all the tools to help here. Hardware passkeys are generally used for the device, but sorry, for the shared workstation use case initially. But then once you're on, we kind of get that high assurance at the perimeter because you don't know who's using this machine. They might, so whether it's hot desking with EDIs, or it's a help desk center with hot desks, or it's just office stuff, you don't know who's in these devices. They might get refreshed every night, but they might not. If you've got that level of protection there, once you're in, now we have the ability to push password keys out to everything else. So like you're saying, password managers, so 1Password, Dashlane, people like this, who are doing synced vaults across systems. You might view that there's a slightly less level of assurance, but you don't need it because you've had the high level of assurance coming in. So for success, there is the getting the right tech, but it's making it easy. We will have customers that pick hardware keys end to end, not necessarily because the hardware key meets every business use case they've got, but because it gives consistent flows, consistent user journeys, and a consistent experience. Because again, that costs money. If you're supporting various different systems, various different flows, your support desk has to help this. So yeah, so for us, it's because there is a little bit sometimes a natural resistance to having a bit of hardware on your keychain. If you're my age, you kind of have a little shudder and think of RSA keys everywhere back in the 90s, etc. So you might get a bit of friction from users thinking, why do I have to use this thing? So it's making sure that the message is there, the flow is there, and at the end of the day, they're happy to have the key. So for us, it's almost as if they don't know they've got a security key. The big problem has been mixed technologies, mixed authentication in the past. I use my hardware key to log into my device, but then I have to use my password into here, or I have to use an SMS into there. So if we can get those flows nice and smooth, that's where we feel there's been a success, that it's automatic, that people want to have the key. If we can go back into a customer and you can see them lining up on rollout days wanting the keys, then it's been a success for us.
How about you, Kevin?
Yeah, I think as Nick says, there one scenario doesn't fit everyone. So when you're talking about different use cases, and it really comes down to how you implement it, and if it's not implemented in a way that is user friendly, uh, it tends to get rejected time and time again. And I think that's really the key. So depending on the use case in our areas, and what we're going to talk about here a little bit later in the webinar, is to talk about the hardware approach and making it easier. But it is one of those things that people will shy away from something that is not user friendly. And you see it in the results that you see here on the statistics, that in each of these cases, if they're using passkeys and they're used, it's easy and it's a click and they're in, it's going to improve so many, is the user experience, but certainly the security that we're all trying to achieve behind it.
Yeah, certainly. All right, so I know, Nick, you touched on this a little bit, but my next question, and this is for both of you, and maybe we'll start with Kevin this time. What are some of the challenges for a workspace environment where it's a shared workspace, or even a hybrid or remote workspace when it comes to user authentication?
Yeah, in our experience, so KSI as a company, we're a peripheral hardware provider, and going back early days with biometrics, the issue was how do you implement it? Where is it at on the desktop, the flow, etc. And I think what really transitioned us into the space was providing these things built into keyboards and having it accessible, especially in healthcare, which is a market that we are strongly a part of for the last decades in healthcare. It was getting the doctors and nurses to come up to a workstation, which is a shared workstation, strongly authenticate, and having the interface be there and really easy to understand. And once that happened, certainly in healthcare, it took off very fast, and people were using the technology. The security wasn't as strong as it should have been in the early days, but now it's migrating to things like the security keys and tokens. And here's where we're gonna talk a little bit further on that, is how do you implement those? where do you insert the key or where do you present that NFC credential? So that's, I think for me, it's if people are going to have an easy approach and an easy entry into it, they're going to use it.
Nick, how about you? What are some of the challenges that you want to highlight?
There are always challenges with hardware. There's getting the hardware out, there's managing the hardware, there's getting it to work with the kit. When we started our journey in 2007 or something, we started as an O-tube generator and USB, and USB was a big definite choice because it's in pretty much every corporate computing device even back then. Um, we we went with smart card. So smart cards always, and I'm sure this is a problem that Kevin has helped solve in the past as well. Smart card has a big infrastructure. You need readers, you need keyboards, especially in the healthcare arena. And we stuck with USB as our transport because we could then be the smart card reader. And we're trying to make it smoother and smoother and smoother. And FIDO stuck with USB, NFC, Bluetooth, and Lightning and biometrics ever since. So healthcare is a good example. So in the NHS in the UK, the National Health Service, has traditionally been smart cards across the board. So you go into your doctor's surgery and they have a certain make keyboard with a card reader in or an external card reader, everything like this. What we're seeing in the health service at the moment is they're pivoting to FIDO now. So if you look at what our National Health Service is doing, they have something called Care Information System 2. And passkeys is a big cornerstone on that authentication for them. And hardware security keys, certainly for the desktop logon and the shared workstations. But medical arenas are difficult. Again, we go back to how those devices are. If we're in GP's office, whilst I generally see the same GP when I go to the doctor, it's in a different room every time. So they move between the rooms. If we go into the clinical basis in the NHS, then again, there's a lot of shared workstations, a lot of shared people coming. But we also find that we then have, okay, where do I plug this thing? My machines are under a desk or USB ports. We will see USB ports that are glued up, taped up, because they want them going in. There's a natural aversion to plugging something with a USB interface in, because again, if you're a person of my age, you think it's either an RSA token or it's a USB drive and that it's storage. And we're not. We're a specialized security device that happens to use USB as our transport and NFC as our transport because they're fairly ubiquitous. And if you think about the name Yubico, I won't push that analogy too far about where we got the name from. So yeah, that shared workstation environment and that hardware environment, a common thing, especially since COVID, has been, okay, yeah, but we don't have desks anymore in our offices. We've cut down the amount of in-office people and we just have hot desks and the machine, if they've got a VDI machine, it's under the desk. Or we've got monitors and dock and that's it, and a USB cable for them. So yeah, that we face pretty much the same sort of problems. And then we need those solutions, which segues quite into what Kevin was saying, especially in healthcare. Healthcare is a big one for us. But having those interfaces there and having some innovative thinking about how that peripheral then adds extra benefits, it all sort of comes together because there's always more problems. People have set ideas with smart card. Oh, well, when I used to remove my smart card, it would lock my workstation for me. Yeah, but if you're doing it over NFC, it locks it as soon as you take it off your NFC pad. So yeah, so those challenges are there. But like I say, actually distribution and getting hardware out is always a problem for us as well.
So I want to go back to what you said about the access to the ports and the challenges, especially in those type of environments. I think, Kevin, this is a good transition to you, which is I want to know more about what KSI is doing to solve some of those challenges, especially in the shared workspace.
Yeah, and of course, healthcare is an issue where it is a shared workstation. So having it at the workstation and having people not knowing where those ports are. So what we did, and I encourage you guys all to go out and take a look, or after this, we certainly will provide pointers and links to our site to show you what we're doing. But in the keyboard, one of the struggles was implementing it where it was readily available. So simply on the keyboard, we've added on the top side of the keyboard ports, USB A and C ports that are ruggedized for you to plug those devices into. And much like like Nick, you're saying in the world of healthcare in the UK with smart cards, we also have done in the past years past smart card keyboards, but it was having that accessible so you could plug them in. And also they're visible so that if you walk away, you're more than likely going to pull that security token out of the keyboard. So certainly encourage, and we'll send some stuff out about that regarding the keyboard. On top of that, we implemented NFC, and so you don't even have to plug it in. You can just lay your security key from YubiKey or the YubiKey NFC versions right on the keyboard and authenticate. So we've integrated those types of devices readily on top of the peripheral. And we also have standalone readers as well that can do the same thing. And even have now in the recent year extended that to a monitor clip version as well that just can be attached to the monitor. But yeah, it is all about where do you insert these keys. We've heard many stories of the PCs, like you said, Nick, being underneath the desktop or attached to the back of the monitor. They're just not readily available. So bringing it out in forefront to the shared workstation is really critical.
So one connection I just want to make for this conversation is that these things are all using FIDO, right? So the YubiKeys are using FIDO standards, so are the keyboards. So that kind of ties in all of this talk that I shared at the beginning about security and usability. You're getting all of that baked into these things through the FIDO standard, which is really great. So Nick, can you talk a little bit more about like how YubiKeys are balancing convenience and security in these high turnover, high traffic environments like retail or healthcare?
Yeah. I mean, again, you have to pick the right solution for the right problem. And what we hope is what we do, and in things like does healthcare and help centers. Help centers are probably the big one for when we are talking proper high turnover and people not caring about their devices or necessarily the machine they're on. They're not. Some of them aren't getting paid that well. They're in, they're out, they're in, they're out. They offer flexibility for us. So those environments always been very good markets for us because the keys are fairly affordable. If they do go missing, you can wipe and re-enroll quickly. You're not going through 15 different things on an app, maybe on a phone. You've got mobile restricted environments for A, security, say in help desks, and B, safety in the medical environment. The less things you can drop, the less things that are dirty, the less things that can get in the way, the better. So you want to cleanness. So when it's in the high environment, I mean, there is obviously the cost of hardware. There's a view that hardware costs and software doesn't. That's a different conversation. But the ability to just actually that the key will work, that they can take the key and they might use it for the desktop logon, that they can then go to another site and they can use it for desktop logon on that site, that they can go off site and use it for the VPN logon or for the Entra logon or for the Office logon. So it's the flexibility of the authentication, being able to give multiple use cases on one single device. It's nice and small and simple. It's purpose built. It does the job it's there for. And it should hopefully keep all these users being phishing resistant. The fact you've got the multiple different, you've got two different versions of FIDO on there. So we've got the older FIDO U2F and we've got the FIDO2 there. So you can meet different technological use cases as well. Whilst we're talking about passwordless and phishing resistant don't equal the same thing. You can still be phishing resistant with passwords still in the mix. We don't really want that. We want a nice user flow. But even with them in the mix, we can still, we can reduce your password rotations, the help desk calls, and so forth. So there are those things. the normal questions we get is just like what happens if I lose, and that's the biggest challenge really for us as a hardware manufacturer in those environments, because they are portable bits of hardware. They're fairly small bits of hardware. They will go through your washing machine. They will survive on the drive. They will go through the dog and to keep a FIDO reference going, and they will keep working. But again, we don't tend to find actually that we get too much wastage of the keys. Well, if there's a value to anything, people tend to look after it. If it's on their house keys, etc., they will look after it. And again, whilst the technology fixes a lot of the problems, we have to make sure the message in those environments is to show how the value is there for the user, how it protects them. You're saying about the adoption of passkeys. I see people in the pub in the using passkey on the phone who I've tried to introduce a hardware key to back in the years, and the level of maybe education for people who have had a drink or your grandma is a bit high. Passkeys for that consumer space are really easy to use, and just start using. They don't necessarily know they're better protected now, but if you're rolling out things like hardware, and especially into a large user environment, you have to educate the user about why it's a good thing for them. Not that just we're giving you this, please use it. Is why this is a good thing for you, how it protects you. Keep a nice, easy user flow for them. Put devices in. If it's NFC, put it in, and make sure the USB readers are there. Sorry, the USB sockets are accessible. Make sure you've got your processors there, and then they see the value of it, and we see a lot less loss, breakage, and loss of physical devices. Because as I say, that's always a big thing, especially for companies when they worry about inventory management.
Yep. I think you're right. Once they realize the value of it, it's something that they make a point not to lose. I know I keep it with me everywhere I go.
Yeah, for sure. Adrian, we just got back from Identiverse, and the one message I think that I see so often in this is, of course, when you're especially in the corporate world or banking or the airlines, we had great attendance at that show. And one of the things that did come up quite a bit that we've been addressing for the past couple of years is something that gets overlooked quite often. So we securely log in with all these processes, whether it's passkeys or the YubiKeys and fingerprint and biometrics. We do all these wonderful steps to assure that we are secure. But there's the open desktop that comes up quite often, and that's an area that we addressed recently in the past couple of years. We developed a technology called Presence Lock that if you have securely logged in, which you have, and you've taken that step, and you walk away, many organizations rely on timeouts, and it's basically like leaving your keys on top of your car and going into the grocery store and hoping nobody decides to take your car down the road. So we've developed this technology that auto locks the desktop when you're gone immediately. As soon as it doesn't detect a person in front of it, we have taken the measures of locking that desktop. So even if you have forgotten that all important security function, we have you covered. So we found that it's a needed area, and I think the combination of throwing all these things together really completes that security circle.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd like to hear from you both just a bit about how you and KSI are working together to advance this environment, to make it more secure, make it more usable, and how are you supporting the deployment to make this process easier for IT teams?
Sure. Nick?
I think I'll let Kevin go first, if you don't mind, then,
Okay.
because as you say, you've just been back from Identiverse, and you were by our stand, and
Yeah.
you've had those joined up
Yeah, I can
conversations
take
with
this,
customers.
Nick. We're right across from each other. One of the things, Yubico is a company they've developed, which of course we're learning as we're partnering with them, all the great things that they do on the deployment, pre-setting and getting these things configured to go out and make it easy. And Adrian, you talked about how this all fits in with FIDO. Well, it's all plug and play. And so the implementation of working together, we've as the two companies, we've done quite a bit um, to make sure that all the product is plug and play. You get the keys, you plug the keyboard in, you don't have to install software. It's going to work right out of the box with any operating system. So it makes it quite easy. So we've done a lot of joint testing over the past couple years, and really the deployment is nothing more than laying that keyboard down and plugging it into your standard port.
Yeah, and I'd say that's the thing. So we we have the technology there, and so would I mean the last question about in high environments that sending the keys out pre-configured. Again, for those large deployments, if we can we can look at, and so this that it's not the FIDO protocols all, but FIDO's developed and platforms developed, and in fact we can pre-register keys in the factory and send them out. So the user starts day one with a FIDO registered key for their platform. And then if they go straight to their desk and you've got their nice little booklet for their onboarding, it's like, well, you'll tap your key here, you type your PIN and away you go, and everything goes on. Then that that success, going back again to the original question about what is a successful deployment, is the fact that they don't have to go through an hour of onboarding their MFA or going through complex questions or being done under supervision. That they can just turn up day one, go to their desk. There's a machine. There's a keyboard with a reader on it or a USB. Plug it in, tap, lay it on. Away you go, and that's it. Change the pin is probably all they'll have to do. That lovely kind of almost credit card experience. So whilst people might not like their banks, they have got that user deployment of devices and credentials because it's basically a smart chip in that thing anyway, down really, really nice and smoothly. And that works really well. And I think that was the interesting thing from what I heard about Identiverse that, we do get asked this quite a lot. Now, it might be more in the banking environments again, where you've got a clean desk and a clean desktop policy, nothing on the desk, nothing on physical or digital when you walk away. But people forget we have a customer in the UK that put luminous stickers on the keys, so that at night, when security wander around the office, they can see if people have left them in because that's
Oh boy,
security.
interesting.
And they might have left the desktop unlocked as well. So anything that can help there is good.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And like I said, I think yeah, the relationship really is synergistic. If anyone is interested, I know both Nick and I and Adrian, we'd love to, you know, have that story with you, describe it. In our case, hardware, it's a very touchy-feely thing, so we're always open to someone if they want to see something physically, and that goes for YubiKeys as well, right? So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And again, it's not a one fits all kind of solution here. I think it is pick what's put there. And if if you're thinking about hardware and environments, then can the users use them all the time? We get asked that. It is a problem. People are used to it in the smart card arena, like we talked about earlier, that you pull your smart card out and it locks. But um, devices have changed. The health service, as we keep using this example, if you're not in the GP offices, you might be in the clinical settings. It's NFC readers. So as soon as you take your card back off your NFC reader, the card's no longer there. The workstation locks, and then you have to turn that off, and all of a sudden, we've lost part of the security of the solution. But
Right.
then we have another solution where we have a different way of looking at it and enforcing that perimeter security, desktop security, etc.
Yeah, and we fill in there, Nick, with that presence lock detection because, if something becomes inconvenient to people and a desktop is locking and they're there and we're our whole process and thought process behind it was we do it when you've just forgotten and we do it for you. And so even if you've left that credential. So yeah, no, I think there's some really exciting things here. It certainly was shown at Identiverse from the type of response from people there last week. So,
I think one of the things I hear with that sort of thing as well is, so we have customers where they put those timeouts on, but they have
mhm,
compliance issues, so they put them on really tight. So I've got customers that literally, if you don't do something for 30 seconds, the desktop locks, kind of
correct.
thing.
And yet you're
That
still
level.
sitting there. You're
And you're still sitting there. You're looking down. You're having a cup of tea. You're checking the football
correct.
or something.
Sounds like a
And
very
then what you
impressive
get back
process.
is, I am so fed up with these YubiKeys. I have to use it every 30 seconds, or every 5 minutes, or 15 times a day, depending on how little they do. And it's not us. It's a badly thought out end-to-end solution. We get a
Yeah.
lot of blame
And
for a lot.
well, and that's kind of why we developed it, Nick, was because think of a physician, a doctor sitting there reading charts and trying to make decisions, and his PC is locking every 30 seconds on its own. It's very frustrating. So then they remove those, like you said, and now you have an open desktop. And if it's I know we're referencing, like you said, a lot of healthcare, but if it's a shared workstation on a cart in a hallway that's public, I mean, you might as well just give them the keys to the kingdom.
Yeah. Well, I think healthcare is a very good example. We've had other customers where, so we have a US customer where the drug carts go round. Every change to prescription or drug delivery has to be keyed in, coded, authenticated to those machines for HIPAA, for all sorts, for patient safety. And you find we've had nurses and clinicians, also we were told, I should say, that nurses and clinicians quitting because the amount of times they have to re-authenticate toward the system. Now, there's a very, very good reason they have to do that, and you don't want them not authenticating.
No.
But then FIDO, but then if you look at, so they fixed it with neoprene bands and an NFC key in and an NFC reader, and it's a tap, tap, tap FIDO authentication because the authentication method is trusted, even though they're not maybe typing anything in too often. It's still a public-private key authentication. It's still validated. It's not OTP. It can't be phished. It will only respond to those devices. And they get that solution right, and then everybody likes their job again. Well, maybe not like their job, but they don't hate
Makes their
work.
job more
Yeah, yeah. If they can get on and do what they're there to do, and the authentication isn't getting in the way, but it is still maintaining those assurance levels, even if they don't understand why, then it's a win for the organization and it's a win for the user.
So I'll just leave one more opportunity if anyone in the audience has any questions to put those into the Q&A widget. But in the meantime, I'll just ask, do either of you have any closing thoughts that you want to share, any last points you want to make sure that you share with the audience today?
I'll let
Kevin
Kevin go first. I've just talked.
Well, thank you, Nick. Well, first, thank you everyone for attending. I think what I'm seeing, and I have seen for the last several years in this space, is people are getting educated. Every day, you feel like you're repeating, a skipping record, just of the stories we're hearing about the security being breached. But I think, the moral of the story is let's make it easy for them and let's make it secure. And I think we're doing a really good job with that, and encourage you guys to reach out to us to help you with your journey.
Yeah, pretty much the same. I would just repeat that phishing resistant doesn't have to be passwordless. We want to get you to passwordless. But if passwords are still a thing, please try and at least transition to phishing resistant as your MFA part.
Mhm.
Google has some good studies from when they did it. Like I say, when they originally implemented passkeys, even though they weren't called that then, it was still username, password plus a key. And this was U2F, so there was no pins involved here. This was just simply put the key in touch. And then they did a follow-up study, they did an internal study, and even just doing that, they got their help desk calls down, they had better user satisfaction. They then looked at, I think, 350,000 breach attacks, and zero was successful with a security key. And again, that wasn't even when they were doing passwordless. So if we can move that way, don't feel you've got to wait to go passwordless to protect those users. look at all the different methods that FIDO Alliance and the manufacturers offer, be this synced passkeys or hardware passkeys. Look at the assurance levels you need, what you need to protect and how you want to protect it. And look at how you're letting them use those keys. If it's going to be mobiles, will they always have mobile signals? If it's going to be physical devices, can they get access to the USB slots? Do they need NFC readers, etc., etc.? And then educate the users in advance, and you will have happy users.
That's what we want.
Agreed.
Users happy and secure.
Yeah, what you want is a user who will go to his coworker and say, do you have one of these yet? You should get one of these.
That's a good takeaway.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Nick.
Well, thank you both for your really great insights. It's been great talking with you. Thank you everyone for attending today. And KSI, thank you for inviting FIDO to come have this conversation with y'all today. I hope everybody has a fantastic rest of your day.
Thank you,
Excellent.
Adrian. Thank you,
Very much.
Nick.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.